Got it.
Yeah.
We're live. Hi, everybody at the Elephant and Castle community. Joining me once again is one of my favorite men in the whole wide world, Brian Beaton, who is the Employee Academy Manager at the House of St. Barnabas here in Soho. And Brian, thank you so much for joining me once again. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Nick. Yeah, not bad at all.
I totally blew your title too. What's your proper title?
I'm the Program and Employment Manager at the House of St. Barnabas.
That's right. And can you tell people what that actually what you do with that? What you do with the house?
So if anyone doesn't know about the House of St. Barnabas, and just to let you know, we're not St. Bernardo's, because everyone gets us mixed up with St. Bernardo's, even though they're a great organization as well. But we're the House of St. Barnabas. We're in Soho, number 1 Greek Street, working from a beautiful Georgian house. What we do, we're a charity, but we're also a members club, which Nick is a member of. I'm not giving that away, am I?
That's all good.
Yeah, so as a charity and as a club, we support people who have been affected by homelessness to refresh their skills, gain new skills, and to hopefully get employment. The question that we ask people is not, well, we don't say to people that they must work. The question we ask people is, what kind of work do you want to do? And then we kind of have this 10-week program, could be different weeks, numbers of weeks, where we support people to reflect and then look at their futures, and then we support them with their futures. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I love what you do, Brian. And Brian, what's the kind of history around the term homelessness? I know that how terminology around political correctness or however you want to kind of say that we're evolving with regards to becoming more compassionate towards people, but in terms of homelessness and the issues that people that you work with face, how has it evolved from them? Actually, are they without a house? Are they without an address? What's the proper terminology now that we use for people without kind of homes per se?
Well, traditionally people will think a homeless person is someone on the street. If you ask a lot of people to basically draw what a homeless person looks like, they'll probably draw someone on the street with a little dog. And that is a kind of traditional view of homelessness. And obviously there is homeless people like that, but there is a lot of, as they say, hidden homeless as well. So people, sofa surfing, people in hostels, people in temporary housing, people in housing that doesn't serve them right. So there's lots of different definitions of homelessness. I think the word homelessness is fine to use. For me, I'm not really big on that thing where you have to use the right word, because those words are always changing. For me, it's about just having the right feeling around it, and trying to do the right things around situations rather than using the right words. So homelessness is not always seen as what it is actually. Yeah. Because we get a lot of people coming to us who haven't had their own home for many, many, many years. And as I said, have been either sofa surfing, living in hostels, different things.
How hard is it, like when people say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just go get a job, and when you see these kind of berating comments towards people who are homeless, how hard is it to get on that? Because like you say, like the homelessness affects people in so many different kind of ways. We see it, like you and I see it every day in Soho Square, and that's what we see as homelessness. But the fact that people who, like, with the housing crisis the way it is, and with people just going through some difficult times in their lives, it's very easy to fall off that system, I suppose, of being from in a sheltered place with your parents, to going off to university and college, to going off and getting a job, getting your first flat, working your way up a property ladder. Like, those things just aren't like that anymore.
No, I don't think yeah.
It's not that linear, is it?
Not at all. No, I don't think it's that easy anymore. And obviously with house prices especially in London, it's like, forget it. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And people who say things like that, like, pull your boots up, get a job, one of the things that we say to people is, it's not, we don't say to people, get a job. You know, as I said before, we ask people, what job do you want to do?
Mm.
And I think that's very important because, you know, a lot of people are in jobs right now that they hate, yeah? And over a amount of time, that causes them emotional issues, yeah? And that could lead to many things, yeah?
Mm.
So I think it's very important that people think about what kind of work they want to do, yeah? Whether they're in work or not in work, to try and think about what is the right work for me, yeah? Yeah, it's very difficult for people right now. You know, when I was a youth, a long time ago, people did do a job for most of their lives. If you're in a job now for like 4 years, people are like, well, you've been there for a long time, haven't you? You know, it's not the same as it was in the olden days, you know. So yeah, so now you have to kind of keep on your toes. You have to keep on retraining, looking at different angles. A lot of people have 3 or 4 different jobs that they can do, you know. And I think that's the difference. Back in the day, someone focused on one job. You know, I'm a postman. I'm gonna be a postman for the rest of my life. It's not like that anymore. You know, most of the people that we work with, and including ourselves, we all have different skills, and you never know when you're going to need that skill. So, you know, people are trying to train so they can basically survive, to tell the truth. You know.
Yeah, it's kind of to survive. You know, isn't it like we're living in a world now where there's never been more wealth on the planet. You know, there's never been more money, and all of this, but yet we are still in a world where people need to, you know, get by just to survive. It's heartbreaking.
I agree with you, Nick. I think, you know, obviously the wealth is not being shared out, and it is completely heartbreaking. You know, and especially I think for me, and that's why, you know, I think we do a good job on the program when we're saying, you know, what do you want to do? Because it's really sad to see people just doing something every day just to survive that they don't enjoy in any way. But not only that they just don't enjoy, but also which isn't actually using their skills, their inherent skills. Yeah. So you know, you come across people who may be fantastic artists and they're doing a job which is completely the opposite, you know, very mundane for them, and you can see that they're suffering. Yeah. So one of the things that we're trying to do here is just, as I said, link people with the opportunities that fit their character and their inherent skills and their likes and passions. Yeah, because it's very important, I feel.
So a lot of people that are going to be watching this are, you know, it's on Facebook. They're going to have access to Facebook, and they're probably going to be sheltered in some way. Most people, but so they're going to come across homelessness in different ways. But when you come across homelessness, when it's like somebody who is really reaching out for help, you know, somebody who wants to better their lives, to get into the system, to start, you know, looking for a career path that they're going to enjoy and thrive in. You know, what are the early things that you can do to help someone along the way, apart from, you know, telling them about things that you guys do? But what are the things that people need, I suppose, logistic wise, to start getting back into the world of employment and to try to get into the system of looking for housing and you know, and some kind of stability that way?
Well, there's lots of different agencies out there that people can turn to, and I think it's very important, especially if someone's been homeless for a while, and especially if they've been street homeless. You know, I don't think it's in any way is it easy to be street homeless anywhere, anywhere in the world, but maybe especially London. Yeah. And you know, most people that we come across that have been street homeless in London or around England have been affected mentally. So you know, there should be some counselling happening for most people. It's not something to be laughed at being on the street. You know, it affects people a lot. And the other thing is, even if people are not street homeless, if they're, as I said, you know, sofa surfing or live in hostels, you know, me and you know, we're lucky we can go home to somewhere. You know, you can have a bad day, you get home, go on the sofa, put your feet up, you know, you feel a lot better, you know. If you haven't got a home or a home that is somewhere that you feel is home to go back to, then when do you rejuvenate? When do you relax? You know, and over a amount of days, if you're not relaxing, if you're not feeling that place where you can just come back and get back to yourself, then yeah, you're going to go further and further from that point. You know, so it is very, very, very important that, you know, as much as possible, people are allowed to have an area where they can just relax, just relax, to tell the truth.
Yeah. Oh, we take that for granted, just to recoup a place of safety and sanctuary,
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
and you're right, you're street homeless, you're always on guard, you're always, but then you're also like people who are sofa surfing in environments that are not safe. You never have that chance just to go, oh, I'm safe.
Oh, totally, Nick. And I've worked in quite a few hostels, and hostels are great. It's a fantastic thing that there are hostels out there. But I think hostel life is even quite hard as well. The walls are quite thin. You hear a lot of noises. There's a lot of people who, as I said, they may have been street homeless before. They may be refugees. They're going through their own things mentally. So, it is quite hard to be. I hate to use the word normal, but it's quite hard to be normal in those situations. So a lot of people that we work with, we have so much respect for the people coming to us, and also we gain so much learning from them as well, because the people we work with, a lot of them been through a lot, but still they come to us and they're still smiling and joking and looking to progress, and a lot of them do really, really, really well.
Yeah, I suppose that's what you get to see out of the program, is the inherent human resiliency in people. People that you just don't expect. Oh, they've been through this and this and this, but you really get down to the deep part of their story, and like the epitome. If they applied the stuff that they did to survive in any other kind of job, they would be CEOs.
That's exactly, that is so true, Nick. And that's the truth is, a lot of our graduates do really well in their jobs. That is true. But you're right, Nick. That's one of the big things in a job for me is learning from the people who come to us. And many a time when I felt a bit sad or felt, oh, this thing's a bit difficult for me, then I think back to some of the people that I've come across and some of their stories and how they've really moved forward with their lives as well. And you think, you know what? It's massive. I've really, really learned from these guys, and we continue to learn, and that's what makes it such a fascinating job. We've got a program starting on Monday. It's our 20th program, so it's a bit of a milestone. And we've done our recruitment. We've got 12 people who are starting. We saw the last person today, and even in the recruitment, some of the stories, some of the energy coming from these guys, it's been mind blowing. So even though we're a little bit tired, we're absolutely so excited and looking forward to Monday and starting the program.
I'm looking forward to seeing some of them around. It's always the energy in the house changes when you see them, coming in and going upstairs and going down for lunches and stuff. See the energy, it really is an amazing thing to be able to see. It's beautiful. But Brian, can you tell us about the process about how do you find these 12 people? What's the application process like? What are the interviews like, and how do you actually ultimately select someone to join the program?
Yeah, so at the moment we have a database of many different agencies that we work with, and when we're in recruitment, we send out information to these agencies. Since the pandemic, we've been holding more online recruitment meetings, so people can just join us, either support workers or clients can join us on these meetings, and we do presentations. And we also go out to organisations such as Thames Reach in Peckham, where we got quite a few people who are going to be on this program. Great work from the guys in Thames Reach. Actually, one of the guys who, twice this has happened now, that two of our graduates from our program have gone into support worker jobs, and they've actually referred people to us. So that's a beautiful circle that we really enjoy. We go out and we talk about what we do. We have presentations. We ask people to come to one of our recruitment days. We usually have 3 recruitment days, usually about a month before the start of the program. And then on those recruitment days, we give another fuller presentation. They have a tour of the beautiful building that we work from. There's usually a talk from one of our graduates, and people can talk to them, when we're not around. Okay, so they're not just saying what we want them to say. Okay, and then we have a group session, like a group workshop, very fun group workshop, which allows us to observe how people are in groups. And then we have lunch. We always supply lunch, and then we ask if people want to apply. And then when they apply, there's a short 15-minute interview that people have. I mean, what we're basically looking for, people need to fill our criteria. And one of the criteria is that they have been affected by homelessness. Yeah. And then they've also got to show to us that if they start the program, they'll do their best to complete the program. After the program, as you probably know, Nick, there is a year of support after the program as well, from one of our progression team and from a mentor who people are matched with on the program. Yeah, so it's very important for us that people would try their best to complete the program. Yeah, so if we what we do, we have these interviews, and then as a group we sit down afterwards and look at all the possibilities, and then we offer the first 12 places. I must say that it's a lovely point when you call people to let them know that we're offering them a place in the program. We usually get lots of big shouts and lots of happiness, singing even.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What so this next term, the 20th one that you've done, is going to be a 10-week one, or is it
program? Yeah, 1 week's going to be off for half term, but yeah, full 10 weeks.
And what does a typical 10-week program look like? What are the things that the recruits go through?
Yeah, so you could say, Nick, we're not a typical employment program. Yeah, even before I started, I think what we were thinking is that we can't just be about employment, because if life was just about employment, then it would be quite a terrible life, to tell the truth. So what we do is about employment, but it's also about day-to-day life and how we deal with day-to-day life. So we do things around personal leadership, around communication, how we communicate to others, how we communicate to ourselves. For example, how we can be quite negative sometimes to ourselves. Yeah. And we do other things such as creative writing and performance. We do yoga on the program. I think on this program as well, we're going to have Tai Chi. We do art. We do lots of different things. So apart from getting people's CVs up to scratch and doing interview training, we do a lot about the person and about the individual. And I think that's what makes the difference, to tell the truth, Nick. That people feel that they've changed, and a lot of the time people come to us, with low confidence because possibly they've been isolated for a while. And within the first 2 weeks, it's amazing how quickly people's confidence can jump up when they're being respected.
I see that a lot in my life, and what I see is a lot of people that you don't expect to have a huge self-esteem, low self-esteem. And it's something that I see a lot in the recovery community, and I can understand why. A lot of people who have lost jobs, or who, have had, maybe their conduct hasn't been coming of what they would wish it to be, and they feel a lot of resentment and regret. But it's I love what you say. It's like this journey of kind of finding self again, and getting to self, so that we can understand that we're not bad people. We've just had some things happen to us, some circumstances in our lives. And that by getting through these circumstances, it actually ends up becoming, it becomes like an asset to us going forward. So the dark places that we've been through, we can actually use those experiences to help other people. So I really love the fact that you guys, it's not just about, hey, let's get you a nice suit and scrub you up and a haircut, and
exactly.
Which, hey, they're really great for self-esteem, but let's get down to the inner bits. Of finding some truth about yourself.
Yeah. And you know it, Nick, because you helped us, was it 3 programs ago now?
I think so, yeah.
It was, so we was one of the few agencies to run a program in 2020, a face-to-face program, which we ran in October, and you supported us with the men's talk, which was open to females as well. But it went down really well, and the men on that program really enjoyed it, and it was brilliant. Brilliant. I will be asking you back again very soon.
I'd love to. I'd love to help out again, and I get to see some of the guys from that program, that are in the neighborhood. So it's been, and I think that's, we all sit there and go, what is it that we need to to get there? And I think that and by there I mean in a place that's more comfortable than or safer than the state that we're in. And for me, you know, as you know, it was a 12-step program that I continue to work today, you know, to the best ability that I can, because really it's a program of self-discovery.
Yeah.
You know, to realize that, you know, that I suffered from an illness and that, you know, I can't use alcohol safely ever again, but that's just part of it. Really the biggest part of it was that, why was I so selfish and self-centered? And it was like selfish and self-centered in a way of like using certain things to protect myself, because I was a scared kid, you know, who was scared of the environment that I grew up in, and a father who could be quite a scary man. And you know that when you're driven by fear, you'll develop certain characteristics that seem very selfish and self-centered, but really they're just protection.
Yeah, it's like coping mechanisms.
Yeah, it's just protection. And that when we can get down to that inner truth, you know, that we can have these fears taken away from us by doing some simple things like what you guys are doing, self-discovery and writing, you know, and talking, and even other tools like meditation, and that can give us just a sense of connection. And that's what I found, Brian, is connection was the key for me.
No, I love what you're saying, Nick, and the term self-discovery is the correct term to use. And you know, I feel that I'm very lucky to be working here, because not only do I meet these fantastic participants who come in, but I also get to sit in the facilitation again and again and again. So you know, I get to understand even more and more and more, and discover more and more about myself. Yeah, and you're right, it is a self-discovery, and you know, there is a lot of reflection on the program, but like most group programs, the power mainly comes from the people in the group. Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work around the outsides, but the real energy is coming from the group. And we pay a lot of attention to the group, especially in the first 2 weeks. We do a lot of workshops in order to bring the group together and make sure that everyone's confident, they feel safe, and they feel that they have a voice in there. Yeah. So yeah, you know, self-discovery is massive. And as we know, you know, when we're challenged, and especially challenged over an amount of time, then our focus kind of goes in. Yeah, we miss a lot of the lovely stuff around us, going around the nature. We don't look up anymore. We just look forward or look down, because of that heaviness we've got on our heads or on our shoulders. And yeah, part of what we do is to try and take that heaviness away, take those clouds away, and just bring in some sunshine. Yeah, and just be playful. You know, the thing that you hear mostly from our training rooms is laughter, to tell the truth. You know, yeah, it's laughter, and you know, as we know, when you're having fun, that's the best time to learn, to tell the truth. Yeah. And when we say learn, it's not as if we're doing a teacher learner type of thing. A lot of what we do is discussion based. Yeah. So we're all learning from each other. Yeah. And as I said, I'm very lucky to be, you know, in this environment where it is a learning environment, and it is an open environment as well. You know, people are safe to say what they want to say. Yeah. We have a contract. I think it's the first or second day we create a contract with all the group. And then we stick by that contract. And if we feel we have to add anything or take anything away, we do. But it's as you said, it's a safe space. And I do feel for a lot of people, you know, it's really good that we're actually in Soho as well, because, you know, it's not that many people who spend a lot of time in Soho in their day-to-day lives. Yeah. So I think it's really good that people can come to Soho, which is not in the area that they normally go into or live, and basically become a different person again. Do you know, just leave that person in whatever area they're living in, come to Soho and create this new person, which basically takes over. You know, so that's really, really interesting. I love what you said about self-discovery, Nick.
Yeah. I'm going to go on about Soho now, because I think that where you're located, I mean, we were talking the other day about somebody who comes in and does talks about the host, right? The gentleman that came in and tells you more about what happens in that area.
Oh God, that's Adam Scott. Yeah, Adam Scott. Yeah, Adam is incredible. If you ever get a chance to go on one of Adam Scott's historical tours of Soho, mind blowing. We had one about, was it 2 weeks ago now, and he'll give you a talk, and I swear to God, you feel like you just all of a sudden you're floating back in time, and you're actually in that time he's talking about. His talks are so good. It's incredible.
I've
He's
got,
got
you
some magical
definitely
powers, to tell the truth.
see, no, okay. This is not going to be a woo-woo talk, but I believe in magical powers because there's something about Soho in itself. There's an energy here that a lot of people, they come into Soho for a night out and a bit of a laugh. But for me, and I can tell you, like hand on heart, I've felt a connection to this part of town since I first came here. I think in 1989, I came when I was 18 years old, just for a quick little on my way to Heathrow Airport to pick somebody up at the airport, and I had to spend a few hours in town. And ever since then, I found a connection here. And then I had an office here on Darbley Street in 1996 or 97.
Oh wow!
And I've just felt a connection to this part of town. And going back into the history of it, you can see that it, what Soho was, and that on the end of Charing Cross Road, and how that was the west part of the city, and there was a lot of there were slums just on the other side of Charing Cross, and it was always kind of a place of destitution and hardship, but also a lot of substance use.
Yeah.
A lot of that. And then I'm like, hey, I'm a recovered alcoholic. Why is it that I love Soho so much? But I really do believe there's an energy of this part of town.
I think you're creative as well, though, Nick. Soho's very well known for having creatives there as well, and definitely being multicultural as well. Soho. The history of Soho is amazing. One thing, there's Claire. I'm not gonna say her surname, but Claire, who works for Soho Radio as well. She's given us a tour of Soho on the program. So that's one of the things I arranged with her, is that she's going to give our participants a tour of Soho and give a historical tour. Because I think it's very important that they're going to spend quite a lot of time here to know more about the area. But there's also this program that Claire told me about, which I watched, which was made by the BFI. It's called Sunset in Soho. So if anyone gets a chance to watch that, Sunset in Soho, I think it was shot in the 50s. It shows Soho in the 50s, and it's very, very interesting. Yeah,
I need to meet Claire. I want to go on one of her tours, and Alex. Yeah.
Well,
I need to go
tell the truth, Nick. If you're around, I'll let you know which day we're doing it. You can tag along in the back.
Okay, or I could carry an umbrella.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Soho's a great place, as you said, Nick. It's a fantastic place, and it's amazing. How many people actually live in Soho as well. And what's amazing about Soho is that there is quite a strong community in Soho. And a lot of people when you mention Soho to people, especially when we go out recruiting and we say that we're in Soho, people kind of look at you like, what? Because they kind of have this thought about what Soho is about, which is maybe what it was about, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago. But it's not really like that anymore. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting place. Our training rooms, obviously we're number 1 Greek Street, and so we're very close to Soho Square, and we're very lucky to have training rooms that we use on the program that look over Soho Square. So it's a beautiful, beautiful place to learn. Yeah.
No, I love it. And the Bazalgette room, which is where the toilet wasn't. What's to do with the toilets? The Bazalgette room.
Toilets, the drainage. Yeah.
Drainage. That's it.
So is it John?
Charles
Bazalgette. So he was him and his crew were the first people to write up the sewer systems for London. Yeah, and they came specifically to that room to write up how they're gonna create a new sewer system. Well, not a new sewer system, a sewer system, because there wasn't one before. And there's, as you know, there is a fake wall in that room where they used to hold their writings and information, because as we know, there was a lot of fires in those days, and I think they made it as fireproof as possible, that extra room. So there's so much history in the house, and there's so much history in Soho. So that's part of the interest of the whole thing, on the program, is that you are going into a very historical house, and so many things have happened in that house. There's so much history of England in that house.
Yeah, Charles Dickens wrote. Well, did he write Tale of Two Cities in one of the rooms down, like parts of it?
Well, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we're not. I suppose we can't be totally sure that he wrote it in there, but what he did do is write about the garden, or part of the garden, because the garden was not as big as it is now. So and he wrote about one of the trees in the garden as well. Yeah. So yeah. Very
yeah, and I know there's more and more and more. We could go on about the history of the house more. And but also, did you see the tree that blew over Soho Square over the weekend?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah, I was at
Very
home, and
sad.
I know I was at home. I heard all the fire engines go by.
Yeah.
And,
I've said this before. I said this at the last graduation when I done a speech. I love trees. Yeah. I think trees are probably the #1 thing in the world. Yeah.
yeah.
Last night I constantly watch sort of programs on nature. And last night I watched a program on fungi, which was really interesting as well.
You was that the one on Netflix called Fungi? Was that the?
No, it possibly is. I think it was on the Discovery Channel.
And they talk about how the trees and everything are all interconnected with all the.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. That's the one, Nick. Wow, mind blowing.
Yeah,
absolutely mind blowing. You know. So yeah. So I love trees and yeah. So it's important for us to really appreciate where we are. You know, we're in a very people around the world know about Soho, London, Soho. Yeah, we're right next to Soho Square. We're overlooking Soho Square. Everyone knows what summer's like in Soho, especially Soho Square. It's absolutely crazy. We've got a couple of table tennis tables there, which I love, and I always usually take on all comers. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm really bad at it, but I'll play you anyway.
Good. Nick, I need to beat someone.
Yeah. Brian, you are a man of different talents too, and I want to get into the theatrical side of Brian, because I had some guests on from the Elephant and Castle is it the Blue Elephant Theater Group?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and they mentioned that you'd written a play.
Yeah, well, I've written 2 plays, Nick. I've had 2 plays. Well, I directed and produced 2 plays. Both of them were played at the Blue Elephant as well. Yeah, it's something I enjoy doing, Nick. I've always been into writing. Yeah, I've always been into comedy. On the program previously, I used to run a workshop called Humorous Sense, where I supported people to progress with their just progress generally, basically through the use of humor and comedy. Yeah. Yeah, the 2 plays. The first one was called Lunch Breaks, which was inspired by me having lunches in Soho Square and some of the conversations that I overheard. And that story basically was about 6 people, 5 of whom worked in the area of Soho, and all 5 of them had some sort of bad habit, and they all kind of had one habit which linked them all, which was that they used the same 2 benches in Soho Square.
Okay.
Yeah? And then over a amount of time from I think it was the 3rd of January to the 1st of April, you see their lives change. Yeah. And then they slowly get together. Yeah. So yeah, people liked it. People liked it a lot. It's a black comedy. A lot of what I write is a bit social commentary, but funny. Just laughing at ourselves. Yeah. The second play we performed last year. It's called Swedish, and basically, ultimately, Swedish is about homelessness, but it is also a kind of heist gangster film as well, gangster play as well. And on both of the plays, I worked with one of my colleagues here, John Smallshaw, infamous John Smallshaw, who is the person who runs the creative writing and performance workshop on the program. He's also one of our first ever graduates from the program. He works in our kitchen. He's also a published poet, and he does tours as well, tours of London. So it's a great pleasure working with him. He's a very charismatic man, and he has been homeless himself, So yeah, Swedish went down really well. We got some really, really good reviews, especially from what's it called, theatre.com. They gave us a fantastic review. And now, Nick, I'm just trying to, and if anyone's out there, I'm writing the script. I've turned the Swedish script, play script, into a film script. So I'm just looking for people to support me with getting that filmed. Yeah. Amazing.
Hang out at Bar Italia. There's always people there having those talks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
always. But
Yeah.
it's something that we try to do on the program as well. We always
Mm,
try to find out the creative side of an individual.
mm,
As far as I'm concerned, if you don't really pay some attention to your creative side, then you probably would not feel your full potential in life.
yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people say, for example, like they love drawing, and then you ask them, when's the last time you drew? And they
Yeah.
said, well, about 5 years ago. And he's like, why? Because I'm too
Yeah.
busy. But you just told me you like doing it. It's something that you really enjoy doing it. How come you don't make time for it? So I
Mm,
think, a lot of times we do the things that we don't do the things that we enjoy.
yeah.
We end up doing things that we don't enjoy, which is crazy.
I'll tell you, part of my journey is that when I went into high school in Canada, which is grades 9 to 12, which is where that's where you're growing into becoming a man, and you're forming your identity, and I was a good athlete, but I was really not very good at school. And reading was something that I really struggled with from the time that I was very young. And I remember even when I was younger, I was about 8 years old, and I was asked to read something in class. And I had astigmatism in my left eye since then. So I found reading, like, I had to read one word at a time. And this teacher who I was only 8, and she was like, you're stupid. And she went and put me in a closet. She put me in a closet. She wasn't very well, now that I know. She had mental health issues, but still, she's a teacher who takes an 8-year-old trying his best to read. I get put in a closet, and I get made to feel really stupid, and I then only just directed myself towards sport, because I thought that was because I was good at sport. I didn't have to worry about the academic side. And when I got into high school, I could BS my way. I could charm teachers and everything. And so instead of like really kind of paying attention to reading and writing, I just manipulated my way through by telling stories and lying to teachers. And then it took one teacher, and I'll never forget this man. His name's Paul Jacoby. And he took me aside and he said, Nick, do you want to be a BSer all your life? Or do you want to apply yourself? And I must have been around 15 or 16 years old. And he knew some of my family and stuff. And he said, there's some writers in your family. There's some, he goes, why don't you start writing? And he got me writing poetry. And he
Oh,
got me
wow.
writing some creative stories. And he never checked my English, my
Yeah.
spelling. And he, in fact, kept a dictionary by his desk, because he said, I'm a brutal speller. He goes, I get what you're writing. And there was a shift in me then, Brian, where I started to believe in myself. I started to have some self-esteem other than what I was doing as a sportsman. But over the years, I then became a sportsman, and then a sports broadcaster, and then I ran my own businesses. But I became further distanced from that 15, 16-year-old kid who was using his mind to imagine stories and to write poetry
Right.
and little short
Okay.
stories. And
Yeah.
now I'm 51, and I see that as being so far away.
Yeah.
But inside of me, there's still that little spark. But the thing is, I still feel stupid. I still feel like I can't write. I still feel like I'm going to be judged. And there's fear keeping me from actually putting pen on paper, even just to journal.
Wow. That's really interesting, Nick, because I was speaking to one of my colleagues today, and I invited her to our creative writing workshops on the program, which are going to be in about 5 weeks. And she said, oh, yeah, I would love to come. I do write, but my issue is I find it hard to actually vocalize it.
Mm,
And I said to her, well, that's what it's all about. Because, as John would say, you could write loads of stuff and just stick them under your bed and no one sees them apart from you, you know.
mm,
And she said, oh, well, these things I'm going to say are quite intimate for me or close. But I think sometimes when we break that barrier and when we open up, we have so many people who come on our program, and when we talk about the creative writing workshops, they're like, I'm not really into that. When we first done it, we kind of made it that people could choose to go and do it. But as it went on, I kind of said, no, we're going to make it compulsory, because we could see how it was changing people. Yeah.
yeah.
And even the people who at first said, nah, it's not something I'm into, and then we had to kind of nudge them a little bit on the evenings and make them do something. And then, some of the people who felt they had nothing to offer, 2 weeks in, they were coming out with some incredible pieces of work, and they were shocked themselves, you know, absolutely shocked, and you could see that they were opening up, you know, and I think sometimes, you know, in society, as I said before, society can really bring us in, you know, and as you said to yourself, Nick, you do not reconnect with those things that you used to be interested in, you know. It takes a lot of time, and sometimes financially it's very difficult to do it as well. But something like writing and performing your writing is something that can be done quite simply, yeah. And what we realized over the programs is that the people who did really connect with that really done well in their progression as well. Yeah, they just became a lot more confident, you know, maybe more confident than they ever had been. You know, and I've lost count of the times where we've had people who joined us who were very, very quiet and shy. And then as you know, during the program, we always get people to talk in front of the group, and slowly, you know, people become more and more confident until they get to the point of graduation and they do a beautiful poem in front of like 70 or 80 people. It's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to watch, Nick.
I think that we as humans all have a creative side in us. And I think that there's this fear of being judged that keeps us away from being able to express that. And I think in not being able to express even whatever you think you're not creative, but whatever beauty you've created inside of you, or as a painter or a writer or an artist, a sculptor, you know, it's yours. And the judgment doesn't matter as long as you have the ability to express it and to feel like, and this is what I love what you guys do, is you create safe spaces where people are, where you're not in any fear of being judged. And I think that when we were talking about self-discovery earlier, that's when we discover ourselves through our own creativity, through our own imaginations, through just feeling flow, you know, and being able to express thoughts and emotions in a way that are safe. Because particularly now with some of the things that I'm working on with men, is that a lot of men still just, you know, many of the problems we see out on the streets today is because a lot of men, particularly because I'm focusing on men, don't have spaces to express emotions. And they're just bottled in, and it becomes this silo of just blah. You know, and of course one day it's just going to blow out, and it's going to come out in a verbal attack or physical attack towards somebody or towards yourself. It's harmful. And we don't put enough emphasis on in that journey of self-discovery of being able to express creativity, and that can come out in any way you want, right?
I totally agree with you, Nick, and I think it's quite obvious, especially in the work we do, but in life in general, it's quite obvious that generally females are a lot more open in their discussions with each other, whereas men are not. They're not. But to say that, but when they're given the opportunity, as you're saying, Nick, when they're in a safe space, and we've seen it on our program, that men, when they're given that space to do it, that they can open up just as well as anyone else, you know. But you know, they have to have that safety, because you know, if you're in most, I'm just generalizing here, but if you're in a group of men and you start let's talk about our feelings, then that's the last thing you're saying.
What are you talking about?
Seriously. But obviously men need to be doing that. And I think, you know, as we go on in life, I think men are starting to open up to that a little bit more.
Yeah. I think there is a shift, and there is a shift happening, I think, and all we need to do is give people protocols and spaces and hold hands and just say, I've been there. Let's keep walking this path together, and we can do it safely without any kind of judgment. And I think when we can express places of vulnerability, that's when a lot of growth can happen.
No, totally, Nick. And as I said before, you know, when it comes to our program and working with groups, and as I said, there is quite a lot of reflection on the program as well. So, you know, when you hear people, we don't ask people to talk about their whole stories or life stories or anything, but sometimes if things come out, little bits come out. And it's beautiful to watch how, you know, because we work with people 18 and upwards. We haven't got a ceiling on age. I think the oldest person we've had on the program is 65, and she's working. So it's beautiful to see the difference in ages, cultures, religions, you know, all mixed together, all supportive of each other, and all being open. You know, for me, that's some of the best times I've ever had on the program, just through conversation, you know. And you can see people just feeling really, really relaxed. And then people are really, really humble, and they listen to each other's stories. They offer advice. They don't tell people what to do. You know what I mean? They offer a bit of advice. They listen. You know, that's what people need. They don't need always need someone to tell you what to do, because you know the way I live is not the same as the way you live. And I always say this to people when they ask me about, oh, how is it? Well, you know, what are the skills you need to be a support worker? I say one of the things you need to do is don't think that people think the same way that you do. You know, that's probably the first thing you need to do, because you know, if everyone thought the same, then we'd all be bloody robots. Do you know what I mean? Everyone thinks differently. Yeah, everyone wants different outcomes. Everyone's got different aims. So one of the first things you need to do is listen, and listen properly.
Yeah. Listening is an art form in itself. But Brian, we're running out of time already, buddy.
I know it. Yeah, we run out already. That's quick.
You know, thank you for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. We'll get you on again in another few months or whatever. We can talk about your screenplay, whether or not you're going to be making a movie in Hollywood.
I don't think it'll be Hollywood. I'm not going to sell out. It's going to be independent. No, so that's what I got. I just want to say, well, firstly, thank you to you, Nick, and the great work you're doing. It's great to see your face regularly in the house as well. Yeah, so, you know, we will be holding our next program in September. So if people feel that they may be interested, please take a look on our website, possibly on our Facebook as well, even Instagram, but firstly on our website. And there's information about how to get onto the program. And if people are interested in the house and the club, do the same thing. You know, it's not that hard to become a member. And as you know, Nick, the club's a beautiful place. It's not a stuck-up club. It's a very laid-back, calm, cool club with one of the biggest, if not the biggest, outside garden in central London. So it's a great place to be in summer. So and we hold events that are open to members of the public. It's not always members. So please take a look on our website.
I'll put the link in the Facebook feed. So if anybody needs to just chase up Brian with regards to anything that he's talked about today, I'll put the link for the House of St. Barnabas website in the feed. And again, Brian, thank you so much for joining me.
No problem, Nick.
All right, buddy. Thanks everybody for joining us. And don't forget to join me on Thursday at 11 a.m. for another Tough Through Tender gathering. We'll see you all later. Thanks. Bye.